Then I found a perfume laced in folded words he tried to hide.
Do you think you know the perfect life? That true love is safe from any secret? Prepare to question everything you believed. I am a 70-year-old American grandmother, and today I decided to open my heart to tell you the most painful and transformative story of my life. A story about a 40-year marriage that seemed blessed, but hid a truth capable of destroying the soul. I will unravel secrets, betrayals, and a theft that left me devastated. Are you ready for this journey? And the question that haunts me, if you were in my shoes, what would you do upon discovering that your entire life was a lie? Leave your comment. I want to know your opinion. Let's begin. My name is Florence Jane Brown, and at 70, I can say I've lived a life that many in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, would consider blessed. 40 years of marriage to Ben Walker Brown, or Ben, as everyone knew him. 40 years of marriage to Ben Walker Brown, or Ben, as everyone knew him. 40 years of sunny mornings on the porch, with the smell of fresh coffee and the singing of birds. 40 years of Sundays at the First Baptist Church, where Ben always held my hand during the sermon, and where we were seen as the model couple, the personification of faith and unity. Chapel Hill is a charming town, you know? One of those places where the local university blends with country life, creating a peculiar rhythm dictated by the seasons and by academic and rural traditions, where the annual Dogwood Festival and the Christmas Parade are the big events of the year, bringing the whole community together. And I loved it. I loved the predictability, the security, the feeling of belonging to something larger, to a community that seemed to weave the lives of its inhabitants with threads of cotton and prayers, and that valued its ties and tradition. Our home, a charming wooden cottage with a spacious porch and a garden I lovingly cultivated, was our refuge. The rose bushes Ben planted on our first wedding anniversary still bloomed every spring, and I always saw them as a symbol of our love, resilient, beautiful, and deeply rooted. We had 2 children, Thomas and Rebecca, who grew up to be successful adults. Thomas, our Tom, followed in his father's footsteps in business and moved to Raleigh, but always came back for Thanksgiving and Christmas. Rebecca, our Becky, became a teacher right here at Chapel Hills Elementary School and gave me 2 wonderful grandchildren who filled my days with laughter and mischief. Ben. Ben. He was the pillar of my life, strong, gentle, with a smile that lit up any room and blue eyes that seemed to see straight into my soul. He worked at the local lumber mill, Brown Lumber Company, a man with calloused hands and a heart of gold. Never a harsh word, never a look of disapproval. He brought me wildflowers for no reason, made me breakfast on Sundays, and called me my queen, even when my hair was messy and my apron was dirty with flour after baking one of my famous cornbreads. I trusted him more than anyone else in this world. More than myself, perhaps. He was my safe harbor, my best friend, my eternal love. I truly believed I had the best husband in the world. People always praised us. "Florence, you're so lucky," the ladies at church would say. Ben is a man of God, an example to us all. And I, with my chest full of pride, just smiled and agreed, because it was true. He was an exceptional man. He supported me in everything, from my garden ideas to my contributions to the church bazaar. He listened attentively, even when I rambled about town gossip or the grandchildren's problems. He was the embodiment of love, loyalty, dedication, or so I thought. Our life was a painting with the softest colors of happiness and routine. We woke up together, had coffee in the sunny kitchen. He went to work. I took care of the house, the garden, my volunteer work. At night, we had dinner, watched television, talked about the day. Sometimes, he surprised me with a chocolate I liked, or hugged me from behind while I washed dishes, kissing my neck. Small gestures that, to me, were worth more than any jewel. They were tangible proof of our love, our unwavering connection. I remember once, last winter, when I caught a bad flu. The house seemed to freeze me to the bone. Ben came into the room with a cup of lemon tea, covered me with an extra blanket, and stayed up all night, placing cold cloths on my forehead. He didn't want me to get up, even to go to the bathroom. "My queen doesn't move today," he repeated softly. "I'll take care of everything." And he did. He took care of me as if I were a precious crystal, fragile and irreplaceable. It was this kind of thing that blinded me. That made me believe I had the kind of husband who no longer existed, that other women complained about their cold, absent, and rude men. But I, with pride, would say, "Mine is different." And I said it with a full chest, as if defending an absolute truth, because to me, mine was the best. But life, even in Chapel Hill, has its own plans, its own twists. And sometimes, cracks begin to appear in the most unexpected places, in the most mundane moments. It was a Tuesday, a day like any other. Ben had left early for a delivery in Charlotte, and I was tidying up the house. I picked up his coat, which he had left thrown over the living room chair, to hang it in the closet. As I picked it up, I felt a strange bulk in the inside pocket. My first reaction was to think it was a forgotten receipt, or maybe a note from a coworker. But when my fingers touched the paper, I felt a different texture, softer, and a delicate floral scent that wasn't mine. It was a letter, carefully folded in several parts, as if to hide its content. The handwriting was elegant, feminine, with flourishes on the capital letters. My heart skipped a beat, but I quickly suppressed it. "Nonsense, Florence," I told myself. "It must be something from work. A grateful client, perhaps." I unfolded the paper slowly, almost afraid of what I would find. The text was short, almost timid, but one sentence in particular hit me like lightning. "Thank you for never abandoning me. I can't wait for our next Wednesday. With love, P." P? Who was P? The question echoed in my mind, but I pushed it away with the same force I would swat an annoying fly. No, it couldn't be. Ben? My Ben? The man who called me queen, who brought me flowers, who prayed with me in church? Impossible. I didn't want to lose what we had over a baseless suspicion. I didn't want distrust, that weed, to suffocate the rose bushes of our love. I folded the letter again, my hand slightly trembling, and put it in my nightstand drawer. I didn't say anything to Ben when he came home that night, not because I was afraid of the answer, but because I wasn't ready to ask the question yet. I needed to be sure, or perhaps, deep down, I just wanted to keep pretending everything was fine, because it was easier to believe than to accept the possibility that everything I had built, everything I loved, could be a well-told lie. That piece of paper, so small and innocent, was the first crack in my world, and I, in my loving blindness, simply ignored it, unaware that it contained the poison that would soon consume me, drop by drop, for years on end, right here, in the heart of Chapel Hill. The letter from Piua remained in my nightstand drawer, a silent secret between me and the oak furniture. I tried, with all my might, to ignore it, to convince myself that it was a mistake, a bad joke, or, as I preferred to believe, something innocent related to Ben's work. He was a businessman after all, and the lumber mill dealt with many clients. Perhaps P was a supplier, a colleague he helped. The human mind is an expert at building bridges over abysses, especially when the abyss is the truth we don't want to face. But despite my efforts to sweep doubt under the rug, a small seed of unease had been planted. And like every seed, it began to germinate, slowly, almost imperceptibly, like a gentle breeze that, without warning, turns into a storm. I started to notice small changes in Ben's behavior. Nothing drastic, nothing that screamed betrayal to the world, but enough for my eyes, once blinded by trust, to begin to see patterns. The business trips to neighboring cities, like Durham or Greensboro, became more frequent. He left earlier and returned later, claiming that work at the lumber mill was hectic, that there were new contracts, that he needed to personally supervise deliveries. I, always understanding, just nodded, preparing a warm dinner and waiting for him, even if the clock already struck 9 or 10 at night. He always called, it's true. "I miss your voice, my queen," he would say, and I would melt. "I'm counting the minutes until I get home." And I believed him. I wanted to believe him. Because when you build an entire life with someone, you choose to believe that your eyes don't see what they don't want to see. You choose to trust, even when intuition whispers something different. There was also the smell. Sometimes, when he came back, a different perfume lingered on his clothes. It wasn't mine, nor the woody smell of the lumber mill. It was a floral, sweet scent, which he attributed to having hugged a coworker, or someone having sprayed perfume near him at the convenience store. I shook my head, pretending to accept the explanation, but the smell persisted in my mind, a dissonant note in the symphony of our life. His cell phone, once always in plain sight, began to be kept more hidden, Messages he read and quickly deleted. Calls he answered in a low voice, moving away from me, claiming they were confidential company matters. I tried not to be paranoid. It's age, Florence, I told myself. You're getting old and suspicious. He's Ben. You're Ben. It was easier to believe I was going crazy than to accept the possibility that the man sleeping beside me, who kissed me every morning, could be living a life different from mine. The routine of Chapel Hill, once so comforting, began to feel like a trap. Every smile from the neighbors, every wave on Main Street, every conversation at church, everything seemed like a reminder of the farce I was living, or that I feared I was living. I felt like an actress in a play, performing the role of the happy, oblivious wife, while the stage crumbled around me. Until the phone rang. Until the phone rang. Until the phone rang. Until the phone rang. It was a Wednesday night. I remember it well. The wind howled outside, and the rain beat against the living room windows. Ben was on another one of his night deliveries. I was sitting on my favorite couch with my knitting in my lap, watching my favorite soap opera, The Secret Lives of Harmony Lane. The irony of it would only hit me much later. The landline phone, the one almost no one used anymore, rang. A sound almost forgotten in our cell phone era. I answered distractedly, my mind still caught up in the TV dramas. "Hello?" I said, my voice a little muffled by the sleep that was starting to overcome me. On the other end, a young, hesitant voice, with an accent that wasn't from Chapel Hill, but that seemed familiar somehow, replied, "Good evening. I'm looking for Ben Walker Brown." My heart skipped a beat. "He hasn't returned from work yet," I replied, my voice firmer than I felt. "Do you want to leave a message for him?" A heavy silence stretched on the other end of the line. It lasted longer than it should have. I was about to ask again who it was, when the voice, now with a hint of nervousness and a strange determination, said, "Excuse me, but are you his wife?" That question paralyzed me. I don't know why, but there was something in the way she said, "his wife," that made me freeze, a sense of dread, a premonition that crept up from the depths of my soul. "Even so," I replied, my voice almost a whisper, "Yes, I am. What happened?" And then, the bomb exploded. The words came fast, like bullets, and hit me squarely, one after another. "I'm Patricia Evans, and I'm the mother of his son, Caleb. He's 17. We need to talk." "I'm Patricia Evans, and I'm the mother of his son, Caleb. He's 17. We need to talk." The world spun around me. My body froze. I couldn't speak for a few seconds. The line seemed to vibrate with the muffled sound of her breathing, as nervous as mine. I wanted to hang up. I wanted it to be a cruel joke, a terrible mistake. But her voice continued, trying to explain, overwhelmed by her own words. "He's the father of my son, Caleb. He's 17. We met on a business trip a long time ago. He always helped us. He was always present, but now he's absent, and I need to talk to him." My heart was beating so fast, it seemed to resonate in my head. My hands trembled uncontrollably. I couldn't think clearly. Only one question, a thread of desperate hope, managed to escape my lips. "Are you sure we're talking about the same Ben Walker Brown? My Ben? Are you sure we're talking about the same Ben Walker Brown? My Ben?" And she replied, without hesitation, without a hint of doubt in her voice, "Ben Walker Brown, from Brown Lumber Company. Tall, with graying temples, light brown eyes, married. He told me he was separated." I don't remember how the call ended. I don't remember what I said, if I said anything at all. I just remember sitting there, phone in hand, for minutes that felt like hours. The knitting slipped from my lap. The television was still on, but I saw nothing. Life became paralyzed, suspended, as if I had been struck by lightning in broad daylight, without warning. The world stopped. The air thinned. The voice on the other end of the line was not just a voice. It was an earthquake. And I was right at the epicenter, paralyzed, as my life crumbled into shards, revealing a truth I never could have imagined, a truth that echoed through the walls of my own home, in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. The phone fell from my hand, but I didn't hear it hit the floor. My body was paralyzed, a statue of pain and disbelief. Patricia Evans's words echoed in my head, a deafening cacophony that drowned out the sound of the rain outside and the murmur of the soap opera on television. "Mother of his son, Caleb. He's 17. 17 years. 17 years of a life I didn't know, hidden under the veil of a marriage I believed to be perfect. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't break anything. The pain was so great, so deep, that my body seemed to have frozen to protect me from feeling it all at once. It was as if my brain had shut down emotions to shield me from the full impact. I just sat there, on the couch, staring at the television screen, where the characters continued their insignificant dramas, oblivious to the earthquake that had just devastated my world. Minutes dragged on, turning into an eternity. The smell of the dinner I had prepared, roasted chicken and mashed potatoes, Ben's favorite dish, lingered in the air, a cruel reminder of the normalcy I had lost. I don't know how long I stayed like that, motionless, my mind in a whirlwind of thoughts and my soul in a frightening void. Then, I heard the familiar sound of Ben's truck pulling into the driveway, the creak of the front door, his heavy but rhythmic footsteps down the hallway, the sound of keys being tossed into the ceramic bowl on the entry table. Every sound, once a comfort, was now a hammer pounding in my head, announcing the arrival of a stranger. He walked into the living room, with his usual smile, baseball cap in hand, and the smell of pine and work that I loved so much. "My queen, I'm home," he said, his voice warm and tired. He leaned in to kiss my forehead, but I imperceptibly flinched, and he didn't seem to notice. "Dinner ready? I'm starving." I watched him. I watched every movement, every expression on his face. He seemed like the same old Ben, the man I had known for over 40 years, Thomas and Rebecca's father, the pillar of our family in Chapel Hill. But to me, at that moment, he was an imposter, an actor in a play I didn't know was being staged. His light brown eyes, once so full of love and loyalty, now seemed to hide an abyss of secrets. His smile, once so sincere, was now a cruel farce. He went to the kitchen, humming an old tune. I followed him, like a ghost, my feet barely touching the floor. He grabbed a plate, served himself generously, and sat at the table, beginning to eat with appetite. It was a tough day today, Florence. We had a problem with the Raleigh delivery. I almost didn't make it back in time for dinner. I didn't answer. I just watched him, my heart beating a strange, painful rhythm in my chest. The scene was so domestic, so normal, that the incongruity with the truth I had just discovered was almost unbearable. How could he sit there, eat, talk, as if nothing had happened? How could he look me in the eyes, knowing what he knew and I didn't? He looked up, noticing my silence. "Is everything all right, dear? You look a little pale." I took a deep breath. The air felt dense, heavy, difficult to inhale. My hands were sweaty, and I clasped them together, trying to control the tremor. It was now. There was no escaping it. The truth needed to be told. "Ben, who is Caleb?" He froze. The fork, halfway to his mouth, stopped. The smile disappeared from his face, replaced by an expression of shock and, for a moment, panic. His eyes, once so open, narrowed, and he looked away as if the question were a blade pointed at his throat. "Caleb?" he repeated, his voice hoarse, almost inaudible. He tried to compose himself, a slight tremor in his hands. "Where did you get that name, Florence?" "Don't try to fool me, Ben." My voice came out stronger than I expected, laden with a fury I didn't know I possessed. I know about Patricia Evans. I know about Caleb. She called me. She told me everything. He dropped the fork onto the plate with a thud. The sound echoed in the silent kitchen. He stood up abruptly, pushing the chair back. He started pacing back and forth in the kitchen, hands in his pockets, his face contorted in a mixture of anger, despair, and, I realized, resignation. It was the look of someone who knew everything had fallen apart. "You talked to her, didn't you?" he whispered, without looking at me, as if the mere mention of Patricia was a confession in itself. "Yes, I did," I replied, my voice now cold and firm. "And now you're going to tell me the truth, all of it, starting with Caleb. How old is he?" He stopped, turned to me. His eyes were teary, but not from sadness, I realized. It was the frustration of being discovered. He lowered his head, like a boy caught red-handed. 17, he murmured. "He's 17 years old. 17 years. Around the same time he brought me wildflowers. Around the same time he swore eternal love to me with a serene smile on his lips. All this time, he had another hidden family, another woman, another child. It wasn't for love, Florence," he began, his voice trembling. "It was a mistake, a moment of weakness. I was on a business trip in Raleigh, feeling lonely, pressured. I met her by chance. It was just one night. When she told me she was pregnant, I panicked. I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't want to destroy our family. I felt responsible. I swear I never loved her like I love you. Never. He tried to approach, to reach out to me, but I recoiled. His words were like nails being hammered into my soul. A mistake? I repeated, my voice full of scorn. 17 years is a mistake, Ben? An entire life is a mistake? You built a parallel life, a son, a family, and you tell me it was a mistake? A mistake is forgetting a date, Ben. A mistake is saying something without thinking. What you did was not a mistake. It was a choice, a series of decisions made consciously, methodically, routinely. He was crying now, tears streaming down his face. I did it to protect you, to protect our family. I didn't want you to suffer. I love you, Florence, always have. Patricia was never like you. It was a mistake. I felt trapped. I didn't know how to get out. If I'm the woman of your life, I said, my voice a thread of ice, why did you have another life, separate from mine? Why did you sleep with me and wake up to visit a son I didn't even know existed? Why did you sit at my table with Thomas and Rebecca while hiding another son? He didn't answer. He just cried, hands on his face, shaking his head. And that image of him there, destroyed, didn't relieve me. It made me feel pity for how small he was compared to the cowardice he had committed. At that moment, silence filled the kitchen. A dense silence, full of everything that still needed to be said. But I already knew. I knew that the truth still needed to be told, but it was already among us, like a ghost that had carried years waiting its turn. And the cruelest truth of all was not the existence of Caleb or Patricia. It was the realization that Ben did not regret the lie, but being discovered. And that revelation was a harder blow than any physical betrayal, for it revealed the true nature of the man I loved, and with whom I had shared my life in Chapel Hill for 4 decades. That moment, the truth coming to light. If you were in my shoes, what would you do with this revelation? Share in the comments. I want to know your opinion. The night dragged on like an illness. Ben tried to approach to whisper apologies, but I pushed him away. My side of the bed seemed a distant continent from his. I didn't sleep. I lay there, staring at the dark ceiling, reliving every word, every revelation. 17 years. The phrase hammered in my head, a countdown to the destruction of my life. It wasn't just a betrayal. It was a daily lie, a cowardice that corroded everything I believed in. Every memory, every moment of happiness I thought I had lived with Ben, now turned into poison. I remembered our first Christmas together, in our small, newly bought house in Chapel Hill. Snow fell softly outside, and Ben hugged me by the fireplace, promising that we would make that house a home full of love and laughter. He gave me a necklace with a small silver heart, saying it was to remind me of our love, which would be eternal. Now, the necklace seemed like shackles, and the heart a cruel joke. I thought of Sunday lunches at my parents' house, where Ben was always the perfect son-in-law, helping my mother in the kitchen and my father with the barbecue. I remembered when my mother fell ill, and Ben was the first to offer help, taking her to appointments in Raleigh, caring for her with a tenderness that made me love him even more. How could the same man who comforted me in the most difficult moment of my life at the same time be living an entire life of lies? These thoughts still gnaw at me today, because a part of me insists on defending the memory of that good man, but the other part, the one that bled with the truth, knows that love, affection, presence were not enough to end the betrayal. Worse still, these gestures, which were once a symbol of love, became the cruel disguise of lies. Morning arrived, gray and cold, just like my soul. Ben tried to talk, but I had no words, only a deep emptiness, a black hole in my chest. I felt stripped of everything I was. The strong woman, dedicated wife, happy mother, everything collapsed in seconds. I wanted to understand where I went wrong, how I didn't notice, how I could trust someone so much who looked me in the eyes and hid a child. Despite the excruciating pain, I forced myself to keep up appearances. I didn't tell my children, Thomas and Rebecca. I didn't talk to my neighbors, nor to anyone at church. I just cried in silence, in the bathroom, in the laundry room, when everyone was asleep. The idea that Chapel Hill would know of my humiliation was unbearable. Gossip would spread like wildfire, and I would become Florence, the betrayed wife, Florence, the fool. I couldn't allow that. Not yet. So, I continued. I kept going to Mass, preparing Sunday lunch, smiling in photos, but inside, my world was in ruins. It was as if I was living in a glass bubble, seeing the outside world, but unable to touch it or be touched by it. Every laugh, every hug, every I love you from Ben now felt like a stab. I started revisiting memories, and each one fit into a pattern of deception I had ignored for so long. I remember once, a few years ago, when I found a gift box under the seat of Ben's car. It was a simple silver ring, but very beautiful. He said it was for me, but that he hadn't dared to give it to me yet because he wanted a special moment, and I believed him. This moved me. I wore that ring for months, thinking it was another example of his love. Only later did I discover it wasn't for me. Little by little, small absences became routine. More frequent trips, calls that went to voicemail, messages answered coldly, but he compensated. He always came back with an affectionate gesture, a souvenir, a funny anecdote from the road. It was such a well-orchestrated act that not even the most attentive heart would dare to suspect. I remember our 20th wedding anniversary. We had a barbecue in the backyard with the whole family and friends from Chapel Hill. Ben was there, smiling, taking pictures with everyone. He hugged us, me, Thomas, and Rebecca, and toasted with a gesture that made me cry. I thank God every day for this incredible woman he put by my side, he said. Everyone applauded, and at that moment, I felt proud of everything we had built. What I didn't know was that, on that same day, in another city, there was a woman waiting for his call and a 16-year-old boy asking why his father didn't come to his party. How can we be so close and yet so far from the truth? It was in this rhythm of double life that the years passed, and I, still with everything I was beginning to understand, insisted on not seeing, because facing the truth would mean facing the end of everything I believed to be real, and I wasn't on that list. Denial, however painful it was on the outside, was still more bearable than the fall. I remember one particular Sunday. We were all gathered in the backyard. Thomas was grilling meat. My grandson, Billy, was chasing the dog. I was sitting on Ben's lap with a glass of juice in my hand, listening to music on the portable radio. He put his arms around my waist and sang in my ear. It was a fullness of happiness, an image of a perfect life. And yet, that day, I already knew. I had already heard Patricia's voice, had already faced his confession, but he was still there pretending because he expected me to be the perfect wife for everyone, pretending because my children still didn't know, pretending because I needed time to understand if this was a forgivable mistake or an irreparable wound. And he acted as if everything was fine, as if, by simply saying he loved me, everything would be erased. He didn't see that what he had destroyed was not just trust, it was my sense of reality. Because when you realize you've spent your life believing a lie, the ground disappears. You no longer know who you are, nor who the person next to you is. In the following days, he tried to please me even more. I woke up to coffee in bed. He offered me foot massages, called me several times a day just to tell me he was thinking of me. And I watched everything with a penetrating silence. Every gesture of his, which once comforted me, now made me shrink inside. It was as if he was trying to glue the pieces of a broken vase with adhesive tape. And it was precisely in that moment of silence, when he thought he was winning me back, that the second revelation arrived, and that one was even harder to forgive. I convinced myself that I was exaggerating, that maybe it was all just my fear, my insecurities, my imagination. I convinced myself that it was better not to confront him. Not at that moment, not after so many years of marriage. I didn't want to destroy what we considered absurd. Yes, because that's what I was telling myself. It's nonsense, Florence. You're just nervous. You'll get over it. But what I called absurd was actually a dull pain that was growing inside me. And growing in silence hurts more. Only those who remain silent to keep the peace know the noise that silence makes in the chest. I tried to continue with my normal life. I cooked the same meals, tidied the house the same way, posed in photos with him the same way. But my eyes no longer smiled. And he found out. Of course he found out. Sometimes he would ask, "You look different? Did something happen?" I too, like an actress who already knows the role by heart, would reply, "Nothing, dear. I'm just tired." Tired was the word that hid everything. Tired of pretending to believe, tired of protecting a truth that no longer existed, tired of fighting against myself, because inside me there was already a woman waking up, a woman silently screaming, "You deserve more than this." But every time that voice got louder, I silenced it. I thought of my children, my grandchildren, our Sunday lunches. I thought of the photos on the living room wall, the smiles at birthday parties, all our history. How could I throw all that away for a suspicion? I was afraid of destroying something more than a marriage. I was afraid of destroying my own identity. Because when you build your whole life with someone, your memory is also forged by their hands. So I forced myself not to see, not to think. I perfumed myself, combed my hair, put on my best dress when he arrived, and he saw. He seemed even friendlier, as if he too was trying to put the pieces back together, as if he wanted to convince me once again that everything was fine. He started calling me my queen more often. He started calling me my queen more often. He gave me more kisses in the morning, sent me messages throughout the day with little hearts, brought me my favorite chocolate when he came back from the market. It was as if he knew that doubt was bothering me, consuming me, but he also knew that love still held me, until the day he invited me to go to the countryside to visit his parents. A weekend at the farm, away from the city, away from everything. He said it would be good for both of us, that we needed time together, that I would miss him when we were alone. And I went. I got ready, packed my bags, and put on the dress he liked best. During the trip, he was especially affectionate. He sang old songs in the car, held my hand on the steering wheel, told old jokes that only we understood. I wanted to believe him, I swear. For a few hours, I left the pain behind and allowed myself to simply be the woman he said he loved. We arrived at the farm, and everything seemed the same. The old house with its wooden porch, the antique furniture smelling of childhood, the birds singing as if the world stood still, safe. His parents welcomed us with joy. His mother hugged me tightly. She said she missed me, that a woman like me was hard to find. I smiled, but inside the pain kept throbbing. That piece of paper, so small and innocent, was the first crack in my world, and I, in my loving blindness, simply ignored it, unaware that it contained the poison that would soon consume me, drop by drop, for years on end. And the worst part is that I still didn't know the full extent of his betrayal, nor how deep he had dug the hole of our ruin, right under my nose in our quiet Chapel Hill. The trip to Ben's parents' farm, on the outskirts of Chapel Hill, should have been a refuge, a balm for my wounded soul. Ben, in his desperate attempt to win me back, was being the husband I had always dreamed he would be. He sang old songs on the car radio, the kind only we knew and that made us laugh with memories. He held my hand on the steering wheel, his fingers intertwined with mine, as if he wanted to hold me to him, to prevent me from escaping. He told silly jokes, anecdotes from our youth, and I found myself smiling, almost forgetting the blade that was piercing my heart. For a few hours, I allowed myself to be the Florence he said he loved, the woman he called queen. I wanted to believe him, I swear. I wanted the pain to disappear, for the truth to dissolve like sugar in water. We arrived at the farm, and the scene was comforting in its familiarity. The old wooden house with its creaking porch and the smell of damp earth and hay. The antique furniture, holding childhood memories of Ben and so many summers we spent there. The birds singing, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. Ben's parents, Martha and George, greeted us with their usual effusive joy. Martha hugged me tightly, her embrace firm and warm. "Florence, my dear, I missed you so much. A woman like you is hard to find, you know." I smiled, a smile that didn't reach my eyes, but seemed to convince everyone. Inside, the pain continued to throb, a dull, constant drum. Ben was in his element on the farm. He helped his father with the animals, fixed fences, laughed with his mother in the kitchen. He seemed genuinely happy, and for a moment, I wondered if it hadn't all been a nightmare, an invention of my tired mind. He brought me flowers from the garden, praised the apple pie I helped Martha make, kissed my forehead with a tenderness that, before, would have melted me. But now, every gesture seemed hollow, a rehearsed performance to convince me of something I already knew was a lie. I watched him with a new gaze, cold and analytical, noticing the artificiality of his gestures, the way he tried to fill the void he himself had created. It was Saturday afternoon. The sun was high, and the air smelled of freshly cut grass. We were in the kitchen, helping Martha prepare lunch. Ben went out to take a call. He said it was from work, something urgent at the lumber mill. I heard him walk away, going to the porch where the cell phone signal was better. I continued chopping vegetables, but my ears were alert, sharpened by the distrust that was now my constant companion. His voice was low, almost a whisper, but the silence of the farm and the gentle wind carried his words to me. I can't talk now. I'm with her. The knife slipped from my hand, falling with a dull thud onto the cutting board. Martha looked at me, worried. Is everything all right, dear? I just nodded, picking up the knife again, my hands slightly trembling. I'm with her. I'm with her. I'm with her. I'm with her. The way he said, her, as if I were the other person, as if I were the inconvenience, the problem, the shadow in the life he had built. I, Florence Jane Brown, the wife of 40 years, the mother of his children, the woman who dedicated her life to him, was now her, the other. Even being in my own house, in my own home, with his own family, that casualness, that simple word, hit me more deeply than any scream, any confession. It etched itself onto my skin like an involuntary tattoo, an indelible mark of humiliation. At that moment, sitting in his parents' farm kitchen, I realized I wasn't just a betrayed wife. I was her, the shadow, the inconvenience in the life he had built. Anger, a cold and calculating anger, began to boil within me. It wasn't explosive, destructive anger. It was a silent rage settling into every cell of my body, promising a revenge I didn't yet know how to execute, but which I knew would come. I didn't sleep that night. I lay there next to Ben, staring at the ceiling, listening to his calm, regular breathing. And I thought of all the times I doubted myself, all the times I chose silence to protect a love that no longer protected me. I saw myself small, insignificant, and felt a rage I didn't know. It wasn't hatred. It was a mixture of indignation, frustration, and shame, because I knew, deep down, that I was allowing all this to continue. That weekend, which should have been one of reconciliation, became the catalyst for my transformation. Every smile from Ben, every touch, every kind word were now just reminders of the farce. I was no longer the naive Florence he had deceived for 17 years. I was her, the woman he hid, even when she was by his side. And this realization, this inversion of roles, ignited a flame within me, a flame that would burn away the farce and set me free. At that moment, sitting on the porch of his parents' house, I realized I wasn't just a betrayed wife. I was her, the shadow, the inconvenience in the life he had built. And anger, a cold and calculating anger, began to boil within me, promising a revenge I didn't yet know how to execute, but which I knew would come, being called her in my own home. That's a blow that hurts deep in the chest. If you've ever felt invisible or the other in your own life, what did you do to find your voice again? Leave your comment. The return from the farm was silent. The familiar landscape of Chapel Hill, with its green fields and red barns, seemed mocking. Every tree, every fence, every house we passed was a reminder of the life I thought I had, and the farce it was revealing itself to be. Ben tried to make conversation, but my answers were monosyllabic, my voice cold as the ice forming in my heart. The anger that had boiled on the farm porch now solidified, transforming into a chilling determination. I was no longer the Florence who cried in secret. I was her, and this new identity gave me a strange strength, a frightening clarity. The following days were a silent torture. Ben continued his attempts to win me back, bringing flowers from the garden, praising my meals, kissing my forehead before leaving for work. Every gesture, once an affection, was now a stab. I watched him like a scientist observes a specimen, analyzing every movement, every word, searching for more clues, more hidden truths. I no longer confronted him. That moment in the kitchen, when he confessed Caleb's existence, had been just the tip of the iceberg. I felt, with a visceral certainty, that there was more, much more. I needed proof, irrefutable proof that could not be denied, that could not be minimized as mistakes or weaknesses. I needed something that would give me the strength to act, to dismantle this farce that had consumed my life. The opportunity arose on a Thursday afternoon. Ben had left for a long delivery, and Thomas and Rebecca were busy with their own lives. The house was silent, except for the ticking of the clock in the living room. I decided to organize the attic, a task I had been putting off for years. It was a dusty place, full of old memories, boxes of the boys' toys, dusty photo albums, old furniture that once belonged to my grandparents. As I moved a pile of old blankets, my fingers brushed against something hard and rectangular, hidden deep inside a cedar chest I rarely opened. It was a dark wooden box with rusty bronze clasps and a small broken padlock. It wasn't a box I recognized. It wasn't mine. And somehow, I knew it was his. My heart started beating faster, an erratic rhythm echoing in my ears. A mixture of dread and a strange excitement washed over me. It was as if I was about to open Pandora's box, knowing that what was inside could destroy me, but unable to resist the temptation. With trembling hands, I opened the clasps. The lid creaked, revealing an interior lined with faded velvet. And there they were, photographs, hundreds of them. Some were old, yellowed by time. Others, more recent, with vibrant, clear colors. I picked up the first one. It was Ben, young, smiling, with his arms around a woman I didn't know. She had light brown hair, large eyes, and a radiant smile. And beside them, a baby, a boy. Ben held him in his arms, with a look of pure adoration I had never seen directed at me, not even at Thomas or Rebecca. I moved on to the next photo. It was the same boy, a little older, perhaps 2 or 3 years old, blowing out candles on a birthday cake. Ben was beside him, with the same woman, and both smiled with genuine happiness, an intimacy that made a lump form in my throat. The caption, handwritten on the back, read, "Caleb, 2nd birthday, our little man, Caleb." The name that had exploded my life, Caleb. The name that had exploded my life. I continued flipping through the photos, one after another, and each image was a blow to my chest. Birthdays, Christmases, picnics in the park, beach trips, Halloween parties, school graduations, an entire life that Ben had lived parallel to mine, with this woman and this son. There were photos of Caleb growing up, a baby, a boy, a teenager. In one of them, he was wearing a baseball shirt, and Ben hugged him proudly, the same pride he showed for Thomas when he played on the school team in Chapel Hill. In another, Caleb was wearing a graduation cap, and Ben and the woman looked at him with tears in their eyes, like proud parents. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a moment of weakness. It wasn't a fleeting affair. It was a complete parallel life. It was love. A love he had built with another woman, while telling me every day that I was the woman of his life. The depth of the betrayal hit me with overwhelming force. He didn't just deceive me, he stole the truth from me, my own reality. And then, in one of the most recent photos, the final blade pierced my soul. The woman, Patricia Evans. I recognized her, not up close but by sight. She was Patricia Evans, the same one who sold crafts at the Chapel Hill Fair, the same one I occasionally saw at the grocery store, the same one who attended the Methodist church on the other side of town. She wasn't a stranger from a distant city. She was from Chapel Hill. She lived in the same community as me. The betrayal was even more intimate, more humiliating than I could bear. My hands trembled so much that the photos slipped from my fingers, scattering across the dusty attic floor. I sat there, amidst those images that told a story that wasn't mine, but was intrinsically linked to mine. I cried. Not the silent, restrained sobs I had shed in the bathroom, not the tears of hurt I had hidden from Ben. It was a visceral cry, a deep lament that came from the depths of my soul. I cried for what was, for what I accepted, for what I believed was true. But above all, I cried for the woman I had to suffocate inside myself all these years, because now she wanted to come out. The woman who believed in eternal love, unwavering loyalty, the perfect life in Chapel Hill. She was there, crushed under the weight of those photographs. I cried for the naive Florence who had been deceived for so long, for the Florence who had defended Ben tooth and nail, for the Florence who had built her life on a foundation of lies. That boy, Caleb, whom I saw in the photos, was not just a secret. He was living proof that the love I thought we had was a lie so deep it swallowed me whole. And the face of the other woman, a face I recognized from the corridors of Chapel Hill, was the final blade that cut my soul, revealing that the betrayal was even more intimate than I could bear. And when it came out, there was no turning back. The photographs scattered across the dusty attic floor were more than mere images. They were fragments of a life that was not mine, but had stolen mine. Every smile from Ben, next to Patricia and Caleb, was a dagger plunged into my heart. The pain was so intense I could barely breathe. It wasn't the pain of discovery that had already hit me. It was the pain of confirmation, of the certainty that I had lived a farce so meticulously constructed that even the woman living it didn't perceive it. I don't know how long I stayed there, sitting on the cold floor, tears streaming down my face and my body trembling uncontrollably. The wooden box, Pandora's box, lay open beside me, spewing its secrets. When I finally managed to stand up, my knees were weak, but my mind was strangely clear. The anger, once cold and calculating, was now a fire consuming me, but also giving me a strength I didn't know I possessed. I gathered the photos, one by one, with still trembling hands, and put them back in the box. I didn't burn them. I didn't tear them. I kept them as evidence of a crime. I walked downstairs, the box heavy in my arms, heavier than any burden I had ever carried. Ben came home in the late afternoon with his usual smile and the off-key singing he always did upon entering. "My queen, I'm home. What's for dinner?" I waited for him in the living room, the box on the coffee table between us. He stopped when he saw me, his smile faltering as he noticed the expression on my face and the dark box. "Florence, what is this?" His voice was a whisper, and I saw the panic in his eyes. He knew. "This, Ben," I said, my voice calm, almost icy, "is your other life, the life you hid from me for 17 years. He tried to approach, but I raised my hand. "No, stay where you are." He tried to approach, but I raised my hand. "No, stay where you are." I opened the box and took out one of the photos, the one of Caleb at his graduation. "This is Caleb, isn't it? Your son. And this is Patricia Evans, the woman with whom you built a family while I lived a lie." Ben collapsed. Literally. He fell onto the couch, hands on his face, shoulders shaking with sobs. "Florence, please. I can explain. I swear I was going to tell you. I didn't want to hurt you." "Didn't want to hurt me?" I repeated, my voice rising a tone. "You hurt me every day for 17 years, Ben. You stole the truth from me, my own reality. You made a fool of me in front of all Chapel Hill, and I didn't even know." He looked up, his eyes red and swollen. I know, I'm a monster. But I love you, Florence. Always have. Patricia was never like you. It was a mistake. I felt trapped. I didn't know how to get out." "Trapped?" I laughed, a bitter, humorless laugh. "You felt trapped? What about me? How do you think I feel now? Trapped in a life that doesn't exist, with a man I don't know." The argument dragged on for hours. He tried to justify, beg for forgiveness, promise he would change. But every word was another nail in the coffin of our marriage. I no longer felt anger, just an emptiness, a deep exhaustion. I wanted him to leave. I wanted it all to end. It was then that, amidst his despair, he dropped the final bomb, the most devastating truth of all. "Florence, I haven't been honest with you about everything. I had to support Caleb and Patricia. The expenses, they were many. I had to take money from our joint account. I mortgaged the house once, and your retirement funds. I had to use a part to cover the debts." The air seemed thin. My body, already exhausted, felt an electric shock. It wasn't just emotional betrayal, it was theft. A theft of my future, my security, my dignity. The violence of those words hit me harder than any slap. "What?" My voice was a whisper, almost inaudible. "What?" My voice was a whisper, almost inaudible. He avoided my gaze. I was desperate. I didn't want them to suffer, and I didn't want you to find out. I thought I could replace the money. I swear, Florence, I was working overtime, trying to cover everything. But things got tough at the lumber mill. The crisis. I couldn't. My mind tried to process the information. Our savings, the house, my retirement. Years of work, of sacrifice, of planning for a peaceful old age in Chapel Hill. All had been drained to support his secret life. The injustice was revolting. I, who had always been so careful with every penny, who dreamed of having a comfortable retirement to travel and spend time with my grandchildren, was now on the brink of financial abyss. You robbed me, Ben," I said, my voice choked with disbelief. "You didn't just betray me with another woman and a child. You robbed us. You robbed our future, my future." He tried to hug me, but I pushed him away with a strength I didn't know I had. "Don't touch me! Don't you dare touch me!" That man, whom I thought I knew, whom I loved, whom I trusted more than myself, was not just an adulterer. He was a thief, a coward who had sacrificed the security of his own family to maintain a farce. The real pain, the physical pain of betrayal, now mingled with the pain of material loss, of the uncertainty of tomorrow. I was 68 years old. How was I going to start over? How was I going to support myself? It wasn't just my heart that was broken. It was our future, the security I thought we had built in Chapel Hill. He didn't just betray me with another woman and a child. He robbed us. And the dimension of that theft was an abyss I didn't know how to cross, a blow that left me devastated and hopeless, with only the ruins of a life I thought was mine. Emotional betrayal wasn't enough. Then came the theft. That was the last straw for me. And for you? What would be the limit of a betrayal that would make you rethink your entire life? The night that followed Ben's confession was the longest of my life. I didn't sleep. Neither did he. He tried to approach, to whisper apologies, but I pushed him away. The bed, once our sanctuary, was now a battlefield. I felt dirty, not just by the betrayal, but by the revelation of the theft. He had drained not only my emotions, but also my security, my future. How could I have been so blind? How could I trust someone who looked me in the eyes and at the same time diverted every penny we built together? Morning arrived, bringing not the sun, but a dense fog of shame and despair. I got up, my movements mechanical, as if my body didn't belong to me. Breakfast was a sepulchral silence. Ben tried to speak, but I ignored him. There were no more words, only emptiness. In Chapel Hill, news travels faster than the wind. A small town is a nest of gossip, and the story of Ben Walker Brown, the pillar of the community, with his double life and a secret son, was a feast. I don't know how the news spread. Maybe Patricia Evans told someone. Maybe Ben, in his despair, confided in a colleague. Or maybe, and this was the most painful possibility, people already knew, and I was the only one living in ignorance. The first indication came at the grocery store. I always went on Thursday mornings, a ritual. The ladies of the town met in the aisles, exchanged recipes, talked about their grandchildren. That Thursday, the silence was deafening. The stares. Oh, the stares. They weren't stares of anger, nor of condemnation. They were stares of pity, of curiosity, of a knowledge I didn't want them to have. I felt each one of them, like needles piercing my skin. Conversation ceased when I passed. Whispers began as soon as I turned my back. I heard fragments. Poor Florence. Who would have thought, Ben? They always seemed so perfect. Each word was another brick in the wall rising around me. I was the betrayed wife, the deceived woman, the fool of Chapel Hill. My identity, once so solid, now crumbled into 1,000 pieces under the weight of others' judgment. The church, which was once my refuge, became a torment. On Sunday, I forced myself to go. I sat in our usual pew, next to Ben, who seemed shrunken, smaller than usual. I felt the stares on us, heavy, intrusive. The church sisters, who used to hug me warmly, now gave me hesitant pats on the shoulder, with expressions of false compassion. Pastor Miller's sermon about forgiveness and redemption seemed a cruel irony, directed directly at me. I didn't want forgiveness. I wanted my life back. The impact on my family was devastating. Thomas, our Tom, called from Raleigh, his voice filled with fury. How could he, Mom? How could he do this to you? I'm coming there and I'm going to confront that bastard. I tried to calm him down, but he was inconsolable. His father's image, his hero, had been shattered. Rebecca, our Becky, who lived so close, withdrew into herself. She came to visit me, but her eyes were empty and she barely spoke. I saw her struggle to process the truth, the pain on her face reflecting mine. She felt ashamed, humiliated, and I felt responsible for her pain, increasing my own guilt. My grandchildren, Billy and Sarah, felt the tension in the air, and their smiles, once so spontaneous, were now more restrained. I isolated myself. I no longer answered the phone. I didn't leave the house, except for essentials. The house, which was once my sanctuary, now seemed like a prison full of memories of lies. Every object, every photograph on the wall, seemed to mock me. Look at the woman who believed everything, the poor girl who smiled at the man who was betraying her. I cried in secret in the bathroom, with the shower running to muffle my sobs. In the laundry room, while folding Ben's clothes, smelling him, which now made me nauseous. I asked myself, how did you let this happen, Florence? How did you not notice? How did you believe all this for so long? The silence in my house was no longer gentle. It was a suffocating, heavy silence, where every corner seemed to remind me of what I had lost. The shame was a heavy cloak, and every glance, every silence, every whisper in the street was a needle piercing my soul. I was no longer Florence, the beloved wife. I was the deceived woman, the fool of Chapel Hill, and the weight of this identity threatened to crush me completely, without me knowing how to get up, or if I even wanted to. And if your story became gossip, how would you react? The days dragged on, heavy and gray. I had hit rock bottom. The shame was such an overwhelming burden that I could barely breathe. Every glance, every whisper in Chapel Hill was a confirmation of my new identity, the deceived woman. I felt useless, empty, a shell of the Florence I used to be. The house, once my refuge, was now a prison of memories. I walked through the hallways, and I could no longer see our history. I only saw traces of a lie that had accompanied me for years. Every piece of furniture, every decorative object, every photo on the wall seemed to mock me. I asked myself, did I deserve this? Did I fail at some point? Did I take this out of our history without realizing it? It was a cruel thought, but very common among women who have been betrayed. We blame ourselves. We want to blame ourselves because it's easier to blame ourselves than to accept that the other person was cruel, that they chose the lie, that they were a coward. I looked in the mirror and saw another woman, a more tired woman with deep-set eyes and trembling lips, a wounded woman, but still standing because even falling apart, I was there, alive, breathing, and trying to understand how to start over. I no longer cried. The tears had dried, replaced by a chilling numbness. I no longer had the strength to fight, nor to pretend. Thomas and Rebecca tried to cheer me up, but I gently pushed them away. I knew they loved me, but they also saw me differently, as if something inside me had broken and could no longer be repaired. The people from the church came to visit me. They prayed with me. They told me I was strong, that God would guide me, but I didn't want to hear that. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to be someone else, someone who wouldn't have experienced this, someone whose name, whose face, whose whole story I could erase from my memory. Ben was still there. He tried to integrate into daily life as if everything could go back to how it was before. He helped me in the kitchen, complimented my dishes, held the door for me as before, but now I saw his gestures with different eyes. They were empty, like a robot trying to repeat an old program. And that made me even angrier, because he acted as if time could heal a 17-year betrayal. Sometimes he asked me to talk. He said he wanted to explain better, that there were still things to know, but I didn't want to hear that. I didn't want any more truth to be revealed from his mouth, because his truth tasted toxic. Every word carried a weight, a memory, a disappointment. During one of these attempts, he came to me with an envelope in his hand. He said he wanted me to read something. I didn't open it. I left it on the kitchen table, where it stayed for days. Every time I passed by, I felt a shiver, as if another bomb was about to explode. I was afraid to open it, but at the same time, something inside me told me I had to face everything to the end. It was in this state of emotional limbo that I isolated myself. I distanced myself from my friends. I stopped attending church meetings. I turned off my cell phone for hours. The television was on, but I wasn't paying attention to anything. The voices, the programs, everything seemed distant, as if I were seeing life through the window of a train without stopping. Until one sleepless night, not knowing where else to run inside, I decided to open the envelope. It wasn't a letter from Ben. It was a pamphlet about a support group for women in crisis, offered by a church in a neighboring town. He had picked it up for me. That gesture, however much it came from him, was the first crack in my bubble of isolation. I started praying daily, not the routine prayers I made at church, but sincere prayers, born from the weariness of carrying a pain that was not just mine. I asked God for wisdom. I didn't want revenge. I wanted healing. Mornings were no longer filled with tears. Little by little, they became spaces of silence and prayer. At first, I prayed in whispers, afraid that the pain would explode in the middle of my words. But with time, I gathered the courage to talk to God as one talks to a friend, without a mask, without fear, without a filter. And I said, Lord, I don't understand. I don't know why this happened, but help me overcome it. Help me not to turn to stone, not to lose myself. It was a sincere prayer, born from the weariness of carrying a pain that was not just mine. It was also the pain of all broken promises, of all postponed dreams, of all versions of myself I left behind to maintain a home. I no longer wanted to know the details. I didn't want him to explain every step of this lie, because I realized that nothing would justify it. No phrase would change what had already been done. So, I turned my gaze inward. It was the only way out. I started writing letters to myself, letters I never sent. I wrote as if I were talking to the woman I was before everything collapsed. I told her, I forgive you for believing. I understand why you loved so much. I just wanted to be happy. And so, from prayer to prayer, I regained strength. It wasn't a strength that appeared overnight. It was like putting together a puzzle without knowing where the pieces were. There were days when I woke up feeling good, wanting to get up, take care of the house, bake a cake like before. There were other days when everything hurt, even breathing. But every time I closed my eyes and knelt, I felt that something greater was holding me, something that didn't come from Ben, nor from my children, nor from anyone's words. It came from within, it came from God. And it was then that I understood that my strength was not a scream. It was a constant whisper that said, you will overcome this, and when you do, you will be stronger than ever. I started to remember Bible stories that always moved me. Women who were humiliated, forgotten, betrayed, but whom God resurrected. Hannah, who cried for her son. Esther, who saved her people. Mary, who saw her own son crucified. And I asked myself, if they succeeded, why wouldn't I? It was at that moment that I stopped seeking revenge. I didn't want him to suffer. I didn't want to return the favor, because I understood that if I carried that hatred, it would slowly kill me. Revenge is a prison, and I wanted to be free. I didn't want to defeat him. I wanted to overcome myself, to overcome this part of me that thought I couldn't go on, to beat the pain that told me my story ended there, overcoming the fear of looking in the mirror and not caring. In that suffocating silence, kneeling on the cold kitchen floor, I felt a spark, a whisper of hope that didn't come from outside, but from within. It was the seed of faith, and I knew that if I watered it, it could pull me out of the abyss, but the path would be long and uncertain, and I didn't know if I would have the strength to walk it, or if Chapel Hill would allow me. The seed of faith, planted in that arid ground of despair, began to germinate, slowly, painfully, but with stubborn persistence. Prayers became my refuge, and the letters to old Florence were a mirror where I began to see not the victim, but the survivor. I still didn't know what the next step would be, but I felt a growing strength, a constant whisper telling me that I deserved more than the life I was living. I started reconnecting with the world, but in a different way. Not to please others, but to please myself. I went back to tending my garden, not with the same passion as before, but with a new intention. It was for me. I resumed my morning walks along the rural roads of Chapel Hill, those same roads that once seemed a reminder of my prison. Now, with every step, I felt the fresh air in my lungs, the sun on my face, and a sense of freedom I hadn't felt in a long time. It was during one of these walks, on a spring morning, that the unexpected happened. I was passing by the small community health clinic in Chapel Hill, a modest building I barely noticed in my daily life. On the concrete bench outside sat an elderly lady. She was small, hunched, with a scarf covering her thin shoulders and an empty gaze lost in the horizon. No one seemed to notice her. No one approached. She was there, alone, amidst the morning bustle. Something inside me stirred, a deep, almost visceral compassion. I saw myself in her, the loneliness that no one allows, the abandonment that is not shouted, but felt in small gestures. the invisible woman I had been inside my own home. I stopped. I hesitated for a moment. The old Florence, the one who avoided contact, who hid from shame, still fighting. But the new Florence, the one emerging from the ashes, was stronger. I approached with a hesitant smile. "Good morning," I said, my voice a little hoarse. "Do you need help? Would you like some water?" She slowly raised her head, her blurred eyes meeting mine. A timid, almost imperceptible smile appeared on her lips, conveying tiredness and gratitude at the same time. "Oh, my dear, thank you. I'm just waiting." I sat beside her, on the cold concrete bench. I offered the bottle of water I was carrying. She took it with trembling hands and drank slowly. We started talking. Her name was Agnes, and she was there for a routine checkup, but her son, who was supposed to take her, didn't show up. She had no one else. In that simple moment, sitting next to Agnes, I saw reflected in her not only loneliness, but also resilience. And somehow, I felt healed. Not all at once, but little by little, in layers. Because as I cared for Agnes, it was as if I was caring for the part of me that had also been abandoned. The part that cried alone, that slept with a torn chest and still woke up to make coffee. I went home with that image etched in my soul. I thought of how many women like me were forgotten people inside, even surrounded by people. And it was in this feeling that a desire arose, a silent calling, the desire to do something meaningful. I started researching. Online, I found free health courses, lectures on elder care, and then, one day, I came across a technical training course in community nursing, offered by a public institution in Durham, the neighboring city. Classes would be in person, at night, twice a week. My heart pounded, a mixture of fear and excitement. I knew it wouldn't be easy. Going back to school after so long at 68 would require courage, concentration, and a strength I was still relearning to have. But I also knew it was necessary, not for status or money, but because for the first time in years, I wanted to take care of myself by doing something that reminded me of my worth. At first, I was embarrassed. I walked into the classroom on the first day, looking at the floor. I was surrounded by younger people, people who still dreamed of starting a career. And there I was, with my wrinkles, with my recent past on my shoulders. But in the first class, listening to the professor talk about the needs of older people in the healthcare system, about the challenges of aging in marginalized areas, it was enough to illuminate my whole being. I understood that this was my place. I studied diligently. I read pamphlets at night, took careful notes, and practiced the basics with training mannequins. I learned to measure blood pressure, give injections, handle medications, and above all, listen. Because being a community nurse is more than physical contact. It's about listening to stories, respecting silences, and understanding that often what the other person needs is not medicine, but care, presence, and support. During my internship, I was sent to visit poorer neighborhoods, not much different from some more remote areas of Chapel Hill. There, I entered the simplest houses, the narrow rooms where great stories were hidden. I met Mrs. Rita, who lived with 3 cats and a forgotten wheelchair by her children. I met Mr. Amaro, who claimed to have forgotten the sound of someone's voice calling him affectionately. In each of them, I rediscovered parts of myself that were still being rebuilt. And in these encounters, I was healing, not all at once, but little by little, in layers. Because as I cared for each of those elderly people, it was as if I was caring for the part of me that had also been abandoned. The invisible woman who was inside my own home. Ben observed all this from afar. At first, he thought it was just a distraction, my attempt to pass the time. Then he realized it was more than that it was a transformation. He started looking at me differently, like someone witnessing a miracle unfolding silently before their eyes, but not knowing how to deal with it. He tried to approach, but I was no longer the same. I spoke. I was polite, but there was a distance, not imposed, but earned. I learned to live without needing his approval. At that moment, helping a stranger, I felt a calling, a voice telling me that my story hadn't ended there. I had a new purpose, an unexpected path that would lead me away from the shadow of betrayal. But I didn't know if I would have the courage to walk it to the end, facing the challenges of a new life. Far from the Florence everyone in Chapel Hill knew, my life began to gain a new color. It wasn't a vibrant rainbow of instant happiness, but rather soft tones of hope and purpose that slowly blended, painting a different picture than I knew. Nursing classes in Durham became my sanctuary. I dedicated myself with an intensity I never imagined possessing. I read books late into the night, took meticulous notes, and volunteered for every practical learning opportunity. Every new skill I acquired, every concept I mastered, was a brick in the reconstruction of my own worth. I, Florence Jane Brown, the woman who thought her life was over, was learning to measure blood pressure, give injections, handle medications. But more important than the techniques, I was learning to listen. To listen to the stories of the elderly I visited during my internship, to respect their silences, to understand that often what they needed was not medicine, but care, presence, and support. I saw myself in them, in Agnes's loneliness, in Mr. Amaro's resignation, and by caring for them, I was caring for myself, for the part of me that had been abandoned and forgotten. People started to notice, not just in Chapel Hill, but also in Durham, where I was building a new network of contacts. My classmates, much younger, looked at me with respect. My professors praised my dedication. A lady at the bakery, whom I saw every morning before going to classes, told me one day, "Florence, you look different, brighter." I smiled, and that smile meant everything, because for the first time in a long time, someone didn't see me as the woman who had suffered, but as the woman who decided to stand up. This glow didn't come from any romance, nor from any reconciliation. It was the glow of someone who had found herself again, after years lost within herself. I started saving money from the small internship stipend I received. I bought myself a lab coat embroidered with my name, Florence Jane Brown, Community Nursing. When I wore it for the first time in front of the mirror, I cried, but it was a different kind of cry, a cry of gratitude, of pride, because there was a woman whom many claimed had been defeated, but who chose to rise with dignity. Inside the house, the changes were subtle, but firm. I started making my schedules and desires clear. When did I want to be alone? When did I want silence? It wasn't revenge, it was self-care. I no longer cared about pleasing Ben. I did things because I wanted to, because I deserved to. I returned to the habit of walking in the morning, as before having children, before chores became an excuse. I woke up, put on my sneakers, tied my hair, and went out. And there, between slow steps and deep breaths, I felt that every street I walked was also a path back to myself. Ben tried to adapt, but I saw his discomfort. He no longer knew where he stood, because now I was the one choosing the path. He tried to please me, but his gestures seemed empty, like a robot trying to repeat an old program. He called me my queen less often, and when he did, the words sounded hollow, without the tenderness of before. He perceived the distance, not imposed by me with anger, but earned by me with independence. I reconnected with people I had long forgotten. A friend from my youth, Sarah, who always called me and I postponed. A cousin, David, who lived in Raleigh and with whom I had lost contact. In these reunions, I realized how much I had locked myself in a world that revolved only around Ben, the house, the children. I rediscovered myself in simple conversations, in forgotten laughs, and remembered that I was much more than someone's wife. I was Florence, complete with stories, dreams, desires. One day, sitting on the couch, I looked at an old photo album. I saw myself young, in a light dress, laughing with my head thrown back. That woman still existed in me, and she was coming back, not in the same way, because now she had scars. But the scars didn't bother me. They became smaller. They showed me that I had survived. And it was in this process of redemption, of looking at myself honestly, that I made the decision. I no longer wanted to live in the shadow of a past that would never return. No longer did I want to share space with a man who had shared his whole life with me without giving me everything I deserved. And most importantly, I no longer wanted to lie to myself. The last straw came in an unexpected way, but it sealed my conviction. I was at the market, doing my weekly shopping. As I passed the cleaning products aisle, I saw Patricia Evans. She was with Caleb. He seemed like a tall, handsome young man, with Ben's light brown eyes. Patricia smiled at him with a maternal affection that squeezed my chest. They looked like a normal, happy family. And there, in the middle of the Chapel Hill market aisle, I realized that there was no hatred in my heart for them, only a deep sadness for the life Ben had stolen from all of us. I didn't confront them. I just watched them from afar, and seeing them, a crystal clear clarity hit me. Ben didn't regret having a parallel life. He regretted being discovered. He wouldn't change. He couldn't change, and I could no longer live in that farce. I had discovered that I can love myself even without the love I once thought I had. I discovered that my worth didn't depend on anyone, that the woman I am today is made of all the scars I carry, but also of all the strength that for a long time I didn't even see. For years I thought I needed to be loved to be happy, that external recognition was essential, that validation came from someone's mouth, someone's attention, someone's affection. But life taught me, with pain, with silence, with falls, that the most powerful love is the one that arises when we choose to take care of ourselves, when we decide to stop begging for crumbs of affection and start building an entire house within ourselves. I was no longer the woman who waited at home while he returned from another home. I was no longer the woman who accepted a cold, transmitted kiss to keep the peace. I was the woman who declared herself in the midst of chaos, the woman who didn't scream to be heard, who didn't seek revenge to heal. I chose dignity. I chose faith. I chose myself. From that day on, everything changed, not with shouts, not with scandals. It changed with silence, with firm decisions. It changed with the certainty that I was not half. I never was. And although Ben still lived in the same house, and I continued to meet him in the hallways and hear the echoes of the old story, inside me, a new chapter was already being written with firm hands, with faith and with the certainty that, even after everything, I could start anew. The glow I felt now didn't come from him, but from me, and it was a glow that Chapel Hill and the world would finally see. The decision was made, not with shouts, not with scandals, but with a silent certainty that filled me from head to toe. I was no longer half. I never was. The Florence who waited at home while he returned from another home. The woman who accepted a cold, transmitted kiss to keep the peace that Florence had died in the attic under the weight of photographs and truth. The woman who emerged was another, forged in pain, but tempered by faith and purpose. One night, after Thomas and Rebecca had gone home, and the house was immersed in the heavy silence that had become our new normal, I called him. Ben was sitting in his armchair, reading the newspaper, as he did every night. He looked up, and I saw the tiredness in his eyes, the resignation. He knew something was coming. Ben, my voice was calm, firm, without a hint of anger, just a crystal clear clarity. I can't do this anymore. He lowered the newspaper, his eyes fixed on mine. Do what, Florence? Live this lie. Live in this house with you, knowing what I know. I can't. I'm no longer the woman you deceived. I'm someone else now. He tried to get up, but I stopped him with a gesture. No, please just listen to me. I spoke about the 17 years, about Caleb, about Patricia. I spoke about the theft, about the future he had drained from us. I spoke about the public shame, about the stairs in Chapel Hill. But there was no accusation in my voice, only the statement of facts. And then I spoke about myself, about the woman I had rediscovered, about the purpose I had found in community nursing. I don't hate you, Ben, I said, and it was the truth. The hatred had dissipated, replaced by a deep sadness and an indifference that frightened me. But I don't love you anymore, and I can't live with someone I don't love, in a house that reminds me of every lie. I deserve more. I deserve the truth. I deserve peace, he cried. Not the desperate sobs of confession, but a silent cry of defeat. He tried to argue, promise he would change, that we would go to therapy, that he would do anything. But his words were empty, echoes of a past that no longer existed. I knew him. He wouldn't change. He couldn't. I'll stay in the house for now, I said, having already planned everything in my mind. But I need you to find another place. I can't live here with you anymore. The news, as expected, spread like wildfire in Chapel Hill. The town, which had already whispered about the betrayal, now exploded in open conversations. Some blamed me for giving up on the marriage, for not forgiving. Others, the majority, looked at me with new respect. The women of the church, who used to give me hesitant pats, now hugged me tightly, some with tears in their eyes, whispering, I knew it, Florence. I always knew something was wrong. You are so strong. Thomas and Rebecca, my children, were my greatest support. Thomas, who once wanted to confront his father, now hugged me and said, Mom, you did the right thing. I love you. we are with you. Rebecca, who had withdrawn, started coming more often, helping me with household chores, listening to me, seeing me. They saw the woman I was becoming, and they were proud. Ben moved out a few weeks later. It was a strange day, full of silent melancholy. He took some boxes, his clothes, his tools. There were no shouts, no arguments, just a formal goodbye, almost strange, between two people who were once everything to each other, and now were just strangers. The house, once full of echoes of lies, now breathed an air of freedom, a silence that, for the first time, was not suffocating, but liberating. My life, at 68, began anew. I graduated from community nursing with honors. My photo appeared in the local Durham newspaper, and even the Chapel Hill newspaper ran a small note. I started working full-time, visiting the elderly, the forgotten, the invisible. Every smile I received, every story I heard, every hand I held was a balm for my soul. I wasn't just caring for them, they were healing me. Mrs. Rita, who lived with her cats, told me stories of her youth, and I laughed with her. Mr. Amaro, who had forgotten the sound of a loving voice, now waited for me at the door with a smile. I helped them with their medications, with their basic needs, but more importantly, I gave them presence, dignity, and the certainty that they were not alone. I was the voice they needed, and they were the reason I had found mine. Financially, the situation was not easy. Savings had been drained, and the house, though mine, still carried the weight of the mortgage. But I was working. I was earning my own money, for the first time in decades, and that gave me a sense of independence worth more than any fortune. I learned to live with less, to value the essential, to find joy in small things. The bread I baked was now for me, and its smell filled the house with a comfort that was no longer a farce. I am no longer the woman who waited inside while he returned from another home. I am no longer the woman who accepted a cold, transmitted kiss to keep the peace. I am the woman who declared herself in the midst of chaos, the woman who didn't scream to be heard, who didn't seek revenge to heal. I chose dignity. I chose faith. I chose myself. Today, at 70, I look back and see a journey I never could have imagined. The pain was real, the injustice revolting, the public shame, an overwhelming burden. But at the limit, when I thought there was no way out, unexpected help, the seed of faith, Agnes's call, showed me a new path. I overcame, and I transformed. My victory was not over Ben, nor over Patricia. My victory was over myself. It was the victory of finding myself, of loving myself, of building an entire house within myself. And if you are hearing this story now, and you also feel forgotten, deceived, underestimated, I want you to know that you can do it too. You can too. Even if you are still hitting rock bottom, even if no one sees your pain, even if you are tired, there is strength within you, a strength that just needs space to grow. Your strength doesn't begin when everything is going well. It begins when you decide to keep moving forward, even after you've broken. Don't be silent. Don't blame yourself. Don't accept less than you deserve. Your story doesn't end where the pain begins. It just transforms. And if this story moved you, if it touched your heart, comment, share. Your message can inspire another woman living in darkness today. Sometimes it's in a story like this that we find the courage to change our own. Dawn always comes, even after the longest night, and your glow is waiting to be revealed. I hope from the bottom of my heart that my story has touched your soul and given you the courage you need. If this journey resonated with you, if it inspired you, please leave your opinion in the comments. Your perspective is very important to me. And if you are not yet part of our family, click the subscribe button and activate the bell to not miss the next stories that will transform your worldview. To continue this conversation and see more inspiring content, watch the next video appearing on your screen. Together, we will build a path of strength and hope.
Beth, but then I found a perfume laced in folded words he tried to hide. And all the years I called him mine unraveled with that single line. How do you breathe when the truth has died? When the one you trust lived a second life? when every vow becomes a chain, and love you knew dissolves in pain. A broken silence lost my name, but through the cracks a flower came. His voice once gold, now cold and thin, his lies poured out with trembling hands. A boy named Caleb, hidden kin, another life, another land. Pictures spilled across the floor, smiles that never belonged to me. Birthdays, summers, secret doors, and tears that beg to be set free.
He said it wasn't love, just time, a lonely night, a foolish cry. But 17 years don't pass unseen. You don't forget a second queen. How do you rise when your world caves in? When you're the ghost inside your skin? When even prayers feel like pretend, and every start still meets the end. I wept in shadows, clung to grace, till faith bloomed softly into place. Dim, and on a bench I found her eyes, an elder woman lost alone. I held her hand, no need for words, in her I saw my shattered home.
With the coat of white I stood once more, learned to heal from ash and flame.
Each soul I touched became my light, and I reclaimed my sacred name.
Now I stand and I don't look down, no longer queen to a broken crown.
I plant my roots in honest ground,
And bloom where no one tears me down. I am not lost, I am the flame
that burned the hurt and kept my name.
If you are broken, bent by grief, still breathing underneath the weight, even your scars can bloom again, and dawn will always find your gate. You are not gone, you are not small. The bloom in you still dares to call.